The key felt like a promise in her hand. Cold, heavy, and intricate, a piece of sculpted brass that whispered of a future she had fought for. For Ava Sterling, this wasn't just a key. It was a coronation. The key to the penthouse high above Manhattan. The key to a life draped in cashmere and diamonds. The key to the heart of Marcus Thorne. As she stepped into the private elevator, the silent ascent felt like a climb to her throne. She smoothed down her silk dress, the city lights painting fleeting constellations across her face. Tonight, she wasn't the other woman. She was the only woman. But some doors are not meant to be opened, and some thrones are already occupied. What she was about to find behind that penthouse door wasn't the future she'd been promised, but a devastating truth held in the hand of the one person she never expected to see. The Uber's hushed electric hum was a stark contrast to the frantic, triumphant symphony playing in Ava's chest. Each beat was a confirmation. You've made it. You've won. Outside, the rain-slicked streets of the Upper East Side reflected the city's indifferent glamour. But inside the car, Ava Sterling was the center of her own universe. She checked her reflection in the darkened screen of her phone. Her blonde hair, styled into a sleek, severe bob, framed a face that had been her greatest asset. Sharp cheekbones, full lips painted a defiant shade of crimson, and eyes the color of a stormy sea, eyes that had first captivated Marcus Thorne across a crowded art gallery 6 months ago. Her dress was a new acquisition, a deep emerald silk that clung to her frame like a second skin, a gift from Marcus. A dress for a queen, he had whispered into her ear last night, his voice a low, intoxicating rumble that still sent shivers down her spine. The dress had arrived by special courier this afternoon, nestled in a box so large it was an event in itself. Tucked into the tissue paper was the key. It wasn't a copy. It was heavy, ornate, with the Thorne family crest, a stylized T intertwined with a hawk, embossed at its head. "My private entrance," the note had read, scrawled in Marcus's impatient, powerful handwriting. "The key to your new home. Meet me there at 9 p.m. The wife is out of town visiting her sister in Connecticut. We have the weekend. We have forever." The wife, Isabella. Ava had never met her, but she had constructed a vivid image of the woman from Marcus's careless descriptions and a few stolen glances at society pages. A ghost at the feast of their affair. According to Marcus, Isabella was a relic of a life he no longer wanted. A woman content with charity luncheons and garden parties. A perfectly suitable partner for the public eye, but devoid of the passion and ambition he craved. "She doesn't understand me, Ava," he'd said, his hand tracing the curve of her jaw. "Not like you do." Ava believed him. She had to. She had staked her entire future on that belief. At 26, she was tired of being a highly educated but poorly paid gallery assistant, surrounded by art she could never afford, and people who saw her as little more than decorative staff. Marcus wasn't just a lover. He was an escape. He was 50, the CEO of Thorne Global Properties, a titan of industry with a predator's smile and a portfolio that could swallow countries whole. He saw her, he said. He saw her fire, her intelligence. He was going to leave Isabella. The divorce was already in motion, his lawyers just ironing out the details to protect the family name. The penthouse was the first step. It was to be their sanctuary, the gilded cage where he would keep his beautiful, brilliant bird until she could fly freely as Mrs. Thorne. The car pulled up to the curb before a limestone behemoth on Fifth Avenue, a building that didn't just overlook Central Park, it commanded it. The doorman, a stoic man named George, whose face was as impassive as the gargoyles adorning the building's facade, gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Marcus had arranged everything. "Must go, Herr Sterling," George said, his voice a gravelly monotone as he held the heavy glass door open. He didn't need to ask. He had been briefed. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and gold leaf. It was silent, save for the distant hum of the city and the soft click of Ava's Louboutin heels on the polished floor. She walked towards the private elevator at the far end, the one Marcus had described. It required a special code, which he had sent via a disappearing message, followed by the brass key. As she ascended, the floors ticking by in a soft, digital chime, her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The culmination of 6 months of clandestine meetings in 5-star hotel suites, whispered promises over $1,000 bottles of wine, and a carefully orchestrated campaign to become indispensable to a man who had everything. She had outmaneuvered a woman with a 25-year history, a shared past, and 2 grown children. She had done it with her beauty, yes, but also with her wit and her unwavering belief that she deserved this. The elevator sighed to a stop. The doors slid open, not into a hallway, but directly into a private vestibule. Before her was a single, imposing door of dark mahogany. She took a deep breath, the air tasting of victory. She slid the heavy brass key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying, well-oiled thunk. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing the threshold of her new life. The first thing that hit her was the view, a wall of glass showcasing the glittering tapestry of Manhattan at night. The second was the scent. It wasn't Marcus's familiar Tom Ford cologne. It was something else. A subtle, elegant fragrance. White gardenias and something sharp like citrus. And the third thing she saw, standing by the window with her back to the city, was her. The wife. Isabella Thorne. For a long, suspended moment, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Ava stood frozen in the doorway, the brass key still clutched in her hand, her mind struggling to reconcile the image before her with the narrative she had so carefully constructed. This was not the woman she had imagined. The Isabella of her mind was a fading society matron, draped in pearls and beige cashmere, her face a mask of pleasant but weary indifference. The woman standing before her was anything but. Isabella Thorne was tall and statuesque, dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored black jumpsuit that bespoke a quiet, lethal elegance. Her dark hair was pulled back into a severe chignon, emphasizing the strong lines of her jaw and her high cheekbones. She held a crystal tumbler of what looked like whiskey, the ice clinking softly as she turned, not with a start, but with a slow, deliberate grace, as if she had been expecting the sound of the door all along. Her eyes, a deep, intelligent brown, met Ava's. There was no shock in them, no anger, just a calm, unnerving appraisal that made Ava feel suddenly cheap and exposed in her queen's dress. "Ava Sterling," Isabella said. Her voice was not the shrill cry of a wronged wife. It was low, measured, and carried an authority that filled the cavernous room. "You're punctual." Marcus always did appreciate punctuality. Ava's mouth went dry. Her carefully rehearsed lines, the mix of defiance and coy charm she had prepared for their inevitable first meeting, evaporated. What are you doing here?" she stammered, the words feeling clumsy and inadequate. "Marcus said you were in Connecticut." A small, humorless smile touched Isabella's lips. "Did he?" "Marcus says many things. It's one of his most predictable and, frankly, most boring qualities." She took a slow sip of her drink, her eyes never leaving Ava's face. "I cancelled my trip. My sister understands. Family emergencies take precedence." Ava's bravado began to return, fueled by a surge of adrenaline. This was a confrontation, then. Fine. She could handle a confrontation. She had won the man. The wife was just a final obstacle to be cleared. She lifted her chin, letting the door swing shut behind her. "I think you're the one who needs to leave," Ava said, her voice shaking only slightly. "Marcus and I need to talk. He's ending things with you. He's probably on his way up right now to tell you." Isabella's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I have no doubt he's on his way. He thinks he's coming here for a weekend of sordid, predictable passion with his latest project." She gestured around the opulent penthouse. "He probably told you this was to be your new home, our love nest." The word "our" hung in the air, a poisonous dart. "It is," Ava insisted, her grip tightening on the key in her hand, holding it up as if it were a talisman. He gave me the key. Isabella's gaze dropped to the brass key. She set her glass down on a marble-topped table with a soft click. "Yes, that key. The guest key. A lovely piece of theatre, isn't it? Solid brass, family crest. It makes a girl feel special." She took a step forward, and from a small hidden pocket in her jumpsuit, she produced a key of her own. It was different. A simple, sleek card of brushed platinum. She held it up, letting it catch the light. "This," Isabella said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "is the master key. It doesn't just open the door. It controls the entire system. The lights, the security, the private elevator. It can grant or deny access to any other key, including the charming little trinket you're holding. I knew the exact moment you entered the building, Ava. I authorized your elevator ride. I unlocked the door for you from my phone, a full 30 seconds before you even touched the lock." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle into the stunned silence. "You didn't walk into your new home. You walked into mine. And you entered because I allowed it." The blood drained from Ava's face. The silk dress suddenly felt like a costume for a play in which she had catastrophically misunderstood her role. The penthouse, which moments ago had seemed like a symbol of her triumph, now felt like a cage. The magnificent view of the city wasn't a backdrop for her new life. It was a silent audience to her humiliation. "Why?" Ava whispered, the fight draining out of her. "Why do this? To gloat? To throw me out yourself?" "Gloat?" Isabella let out a short, dry laugh. "Oh, darling, this is so much bigger than gloating. Gloating is for amateurs. This is about business." She retrieved her drink and gestured towards a pair of sprawling white sofas. "Please, sit. We have a great deal to discuss, and you'll want to be comfortable. Marcus won't be here for another 45 minutes. And trust me, you and I need to be on the same page before he arrives." Ava sank into the plush white sofa, her body feeling heavy and disconnected. The soft leather, which should have felt like the pinnacle of luxury, now seemed to swallow her whole. Across from her, Isabella settled into a matching armchair, the picture of serene, formidable control. For the first time, Ava noticed the details of the room, not as aspirational set dressing, but as extensions of the woman who commanded it. The art on the walls wasn't generic hotel lobby fare. It was a curated collection of powerful, challenging pieces. A fierce abstract by Helen Frankenthaler, a brooding sculpture by Louise Bourgeois. This wasn't Marcus's space. It was Isabella's. "You're wondering how I knew," Isabella began, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. It wasn't a question. "You're probably assuming a tearful phone call from a friend, a suspicious credit card bill, a lipstick stain on a collar. It's what he'd expect. It's what you'd expect. Marcus is a creature of cliché." She leaned forward, her eyes sharp and focused. "But I am not. I did not find out about you, Ava. I discovered you. There's a difference." Ava remained silent, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and dread. "Marcus and I," Isabella continued, "are partners in more than just marriage. The Thorne global brand is built on an image, but the Thorne family fortune is managed by the Beaumont Trust, my family's trust. I oversee the accounts, the investments, the acquisitions. Marcus is the face, the deal maker. I am an architect. I see every wire transfer, every invoice, every expense report." She paused, letting that sink in. 6 months ago, I noticed a discrepancy, a minor one, easily overlooked. An acquisition for our private art collection. A sculpture from a small but promising artist, purchased from the Bennett Gallery downtown. The price was inflated. Not by much, just enough to be suspicious. 15% over its market value. I made a quiet inquiry. The gallery confirmed the sale price, but the artist's representative confirmed the artist's much lower commission. The gallery had pocketed the difference. Not unusual, but the paperwork was routed through one of Marcus's personal holding companies, not the Foundation's official channels. It was sloppy. Ava felt a cold knot form in her stomach. The Bennett Gallery. Her gallery. She remembered the sale. A brash, wealthy new client had walked in, barely glanced at the art, and bought the most expensive piece in the room. His name was Marcus Thorne. He had asked for her by name. "That sloppy transaction was my first breadcrumb," Isabella said. So I started pulling the thread. I tasked my forensic accountant, a delightful man named Julian, who finds beauty in spreadsheets, to look into all of Marcus's discretionary accounts. And what he found was a pattern. Isabella's voice was devoid of emotion, like a CEO delivering a quarterly report. Inflated invoices, consulting fees paid to newly formed LLCs with no operational history, charitable donations that were funneled back into shell corporations. Marcus wasn't just cheating on me, Ava. He's been systematically embezzling from our joint assets, from my family's trust. He's been using our money to fund his hobbies. She gestured vaguely at Ava. The implication was clear. Ava wasn't a great love. She was a hobby, an expensive, embezzled hobby. The trips to Paris? Billed as international real estate scouting. The Cartier bracelet he gave you? Logged as corporate gifting. This very dress? Isabella's eyes scanned the emerald silk with cold detachment. Paid for out of an account designated for lobbying and political entertainment. He's been building a separate life, a separate nest egg, on my family's dime. He thinks I'm too busy organizing the annual hospital gala to notice the millions of dollars he's been siphoning off for years. Ava felt a wave of nausea. Every gift, every grand romantic gesture was being recontextualized as a criminal transaction. The narrative of their great love story was dissolving into a sordid tale of white-collar crime. So when I found out he had put a down payment on a yacht and named it the Ava, it wasn't hard to find you, Isabella concluded. A quick social media search, a background check. Ava Sterling. Ambitious, beautiful, working at the very gallery where the embezzlement began. It was all very neat, very tidy, and very, very foolish on his part. Ava finally found her voice, though it was a mere whisper. "So you've known? For how long?" "I've had a comprehensive file on you and Marcus for 4 months, Isabella stated flatly. "I know about the suite you keep at the Carlisle. I know you prefer lilies to roses. I know he promised you he was leaving me, that the divorce was imminent. He uses that line every time. The last one was a yoga instructor named Chloe. Before that, an intern from his London office. You are simply the most expensive." The words struck Ava with the force of a physical blow. Every time. The last one. She wasn't the exception. She was the rule. She was just the latest in a series of interchangeable women, the latest project. The humiliation was so profound it was suffocating. She had believed herself to be a queen, a conqueror. In reality, she was just a line item on a spreadsheet, a pawn in a game she hadn't even known she was playing. Isabella watched the dawning horror on Ava's face without a trace of pity. You see, this was never about saving my marriage. My marriage has been a business arrangement for a decade. This is about protecting my legacy, my children's inheritance, and my future. Marcus made a fatal error. He mistook my silence for ignorance. And now, she leaned back, a predator at ease. It's time to liquidate the asset. The silence in the penthouse stretched, thick and heavy. The only sound was the distant, mournful wail of a siren rising from the streets below. Ava felt as if she were trapped under glass, every illusion she had harbored about her life with Marcus being systematically shattered by the calm, relentless woman sitting across from her. An intern? Ava finally managed to say, the name catching in her throat. Chloe. Chloe got a very generous severance package and a non-disclosure agreement a week before Marcus met you, Isabella said, her tone casual, as if discussing a minor staffing change. He told her he needed to focus on his family. He probably told you he'd been miserable for years, and you were the first person to make him feel alive. Am I close? The words were almost a verbatim quote of what Marcus had told her on their third date, his hand covering hers across a candlelit table. The intimacy of that moment now felt grotesque, a recycled performance for an audience of one. Ava's mind raced, replaying the last 6 months in a new, horrific light. The sudden business trips where he was unreachable for hours. The times he had casually asked for her opinion on offshore banking or art as an investment. He wasn't confiding in her. He was using her, testing his lies, perhaps even subconsciously implicating her in his schemes, assuming she was too dazzled by the glamour to understand the substance. She remembered one evening, a month ago. They were in his study at his country house, a place she was only allowed to visit when Isabella was supposedly away. He was on the phone, arguing with someone about logistics and transparency. When he hung up, he was agitated. He had poured himself a large brandy and turned to her. "It's my wife's trustees," he'd grumbled. "Bean counters. They question every little thing. They don't understand that to make money, you have to spend money. To build an empire, you can't be afraid to bend the rules." He had framed it as a struggle between his visionary genius and their small-minded bureaucracy. He had made her feel like his sole confidant, the only one who truly grasped the pressures he was under. Now, Ava understood. He wasn't talking to his visionary partner. He was complaining to his embezzled asset about the very people who were closing in on him. He told me this penthouse was a new acquisition for the company," Ava said, her voice hollow as she tried to salvage some piece of the fantasy. "A corporate apartment he was going to take over for us." Isabella laughed, a genuine sharp sound this time. "My dear, I bought this penthouse with my own inheritance a decade ago, before Marcus's company even went public. It's in my name, and my name alone. He has no legal claim to it whatsoever. He brought you here, to my home, because the arrogance of men like Marcus is boundless. He truly believes he is the sun, and we are all just planets who revolve around him. It never occurs to him that one of the planets might just be a meteor, waiting for the right moment to strike." Isabella stood up and walked over to a sleek, lacquered credenza. She opened a drawer and pulled out a thin leather portfolio, placing it on the coffee table between them. She opened it. Inside were documents, photographs, and spreadsheets. Evidence, Isabella said simply. She slid a photograph across the table. It was of Marcus, laughing on a yacht. His arm was around a stunning redhead. The name on the boat's transom was clearly visible. The Serenity. This was taken 2 years ago. Serenity was Chloe's middle name, Isabella explained coolly. He sank it for the insurance money 6 months later, right before he had his lawyers draft the paperwork for the Ava. He's not just a cheat, you see. He's unoriginal. She pushed another document forward. It was a bank statement for a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. It showed a transfer of $250,000 to another account. The date of the transfer corresponded to the day after Ava had mentioned she was looking to invest in a friend's tech startup. Marcus had offered to handle it for her, a grand gesture of support for her ambitions. He had taken her money. Ava stared at the paper, the numbers blurring through a sudden film of tears. It wasn't just the betrayal of the heart, it was the cold, calculated violation of her trust, her ambition, her very identity. He hadn't seen her as a partner. He had seen her as a mark. He used me, Ava whispered, the realization of a cold stone in her gut. All of it. It was all a lie. Yes, Isabella agreed, her voice softening for the first time, not with pity, but with a kind of weary acknowledgement. He used you. He used your ambition against you. He saw a smart, hungry young woman, and he knew he could sell you a story you desperately wanted to believe. He does the same thing in his business dealings. He finds the vulnerability and exploits it. It's how he built his empire. Ava looked up from the damning evidence, her own reflection staring back from the glossy surface of the table. The confident, triumphant woman who had walked in 45 minutes ago was gone. In her place was a fool, a beautifully dressed, hopelessly naive fool. The crimson of her lipstick now felt garish, the emerald of her dress like a brand. A new emotion began to bubble up through the humiliation and the heartbreak. Rage. A cold, pure fury directed not at the woman across from her, but at the man who had authored this entire charade. The man who was, at this very moment, on his way here, expecting to find his adoring mistress waiting to begin there forever. "What do you want from me?" Ava asked, her voice hard, the tears receding. Isabella closed the portfolio, a faint, calculating smile returning to her lips. "I told you, this is business. Marcus has leveraged himself to the hilt. He's being investigated by the SEC for insider trading, though he doesn't know the investigation is as advanced as it is. My testimony, along with the evidence from my accountant, will be enough to ruin his public reputation and freeze most of our joint assets. But to ensure he goes to prison, to truly dismantle his power structure so he can never touch my family's money or my children's future again, I need an inside witness." Isabella's dark eyes locked onto Ava's. "I need you." The offer hung in the air, audacious and terrifying. It shifted the entire dynamic of the room. This was no longer a confrontation between a wife and a mistress. It was a recruitment. Ava stared at Isabella, seeing her now in a completely different light. She wasn't just a scorned woman. She was a master strategist, moving her pieces across a board that Ava had never even seen. "You want me to do what?" Ava asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "Testify against him. Why would I do that? He'll destroy me." "He'll try," Isabella corrected her calmly. "His lawyers will paint you as a gold-digging harlot, a bitter, spurned lover. They will try to bury you in litigation and smear your name across every tabloid in the country. On your own, you would stand no chance." She leaned forward, her intensity palpable. "But you won't be on your own. You will be under the protection of my legal team, the best corporate and criminal defense attorneys in New York. They will grant you full immunity in exchange for your testimony. The money he invested for you? It will be returned, quietly from a private account of mine. The gifts, the apartment he was paying for, the car, you keep them all. Consider it a severance package. Ava was speechless. The sheer scale of Isabella's plan was breathtaking. She had thought this evening was the climax of her own story, but she was merely a character in Isabella's meticulously plotted drama. Why me? Ava pressed, a desperate need to understand her role in this Machiavellian play. You have documents, accountants. You said so yourself. Documents show transactions. I need someone to provide the context, Isabella explained, her voice precise and clinical. I need you to testify about the conversations you overheard, the late-night phone calls where he boasted about outsmarting the feds, the time he used your laptop to make a stock trade because he thought it was untraceable. He got careless with you, Ava. He got arrogant. He let you see behind the curtain because he fundamentally does not respect you enough to believe you could ever be a threat. Your testimony will be the human element, the narrative that a jury can understand. You will be the nail in his coffin. The offer was a lifeline and a curse. On one hand, it was a path to escape the wreckage of her life with her dignity, and even her finances, surprisingly intact. On the other, it meant aligning herself with this formidable, intimidating woman and actively participating in the destruction of the man she had, until an hour ago, believed she loved. But did she love him? Or did she love the dream he sold her? The man in the documents, the one who named his yachts after his mistresses and embezzled from his own family, was not the man she thought she knew. He was a stranger, a monster dressed in a bespoke suit. The love, she realized with a sickening clarity, had been for the facade, and the facade was now shattered. What if I say no? Ava asked, testing the boundaries of her new reality. Isabella's expression hardened slightly. If you say no, I will proceed without you. The SEC will still come for him. When they do, every one of his associates will be scrutinized, and you, Ms. Sterling, are a very prominent associate. That investment money he funneled for you? That's called money laundering. The gifts paid for with embezzled funds. That's receiving stolen property. Without my protection, you won't be a witness. You'll be a co-conspirator. You're a smart woman, Ava. You do the math. Your choice is between a comfortable, quiet new life somewhere far away from here, or a shared cell block with a yoga instructor named Chloe. The threat was delivered without heat, a simple statement of fact that made it all the more terrifying. Ava looked down at her hands, which were trembling. She had walked into this penthouse seeking power, and now she was utterly powerless. Her only move was to choose a side, and there was only one side that offered a future. She took a deep, shuddering breath, the scent of white gardenias and victory filling her lungs. What do I have to do? A slow, satisfied smile spread across Isabella's face. For now, you do nothing. You sit here, you look beautiful, and when Marcus walks through that door, you play the part he expects you to play. The loving, adoring mistress. You let him believe he is in control. You let him walk into the center of the web. Isabella glanced at the delicate Patek Philippe watch on her wrist. He'll be here in 5 minutes. He'll be surprised to see me, of course. He'll lie. He'll try to gaslight us both, to turn us against each other. It's crucial that you don't show your hand. Let me do all the talking. You just need to sit there and watch the show. Your only role tonight is to be the audience to his downfall. As if on cue, a soft chime echoed through the penthouse. The private elevator was ascending. "Showtime," Isabella whispered, picking up her glass of whiskey and taking a final, steadying sip. She looked every inch the queen on her throne, waiting for the court jester to make his final, fatal mistake. Ava's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat signaling the start of the final act. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper, and Marcus Thorne strode into the penthouse. He was exactly as Ava remembered, yet somehow diminished in the harsh light of the truth. He was handsome, impeccably dressed in a dark grey suit that probably cost more than her car, his silvering hair perfectly coiffed. He held a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon in one hand and a velvet jeweller's box in the other. His face was lit with a confident, predatory smile, the smile he always wore when he was about to close a deal or begin a seduction. His eyes immediately found Ava on the sofa, and his smile widened. "There she is, my goddess in green," he began, his voice a low, intimate purr. He took 2 steps into the room before he froze. His gaze had shifted, finally landing on the figure in the armchair. Isabella. The transformation was instantaneous and astonishing. The confident smile evaporated, replaced by a flicker of panic, then a mask of cool, calculated composure. The titan of industry became a schoolboy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Isabella," he said, his voice tight. "What a surprise. I thought you were in Connecticut." "Plans change," Isabella replied, her voice smooth as silk. She didn't get up. She simply gestured with her glass towards Ava. "You have a guest, Marcus. Don't be rude." Marcus's eyes darted between the 2 women, his powerful brain whirring, trying to process the scene, to find an angle, a lie that would fit. Ava could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. "Ava, darling," he said, his voice regaining some of its practiced charm, though it was strained at the edges. "This is a misunderstanding. Isabella, my love, Ava is a business associate. We were finalizing the details of a new arts endowment for the foundation. I was just bringing a bottle to celebrate." He held up the champagne as if it were proof of his innocence. The lie was so bald, so insulting in its simplicity, that Ava almost laughed. A business meeting? In a silk dress at 10 p.m., with a key to his private penthouse? Isabella, however, remained perfectly composed. "An arts endowment? How wonderful. I manage the foundation, Marcus. Strange that I wouldn't be aware of a new endowment large enough to warrant a personal meeting in my home." She paused. "And the jewelry box? Is that a corporate seal for the new foundation?" Marcus glanced down at the velvet box in his hand, as if he'd forgotten it was there. He fumbled for a moment. "It's a gift, a corporate gift, for Ms. Sterling's gallery, for their cooperation." "How thoughtful," Isabella said, her voice dripping with irony. "Why don't you give it to her? Let's see this generous corporate gift." Cornered, Marcus walked stiffly over to Ava. He avoided her eyes, his jaw clenched. He thrust the box at her. "For the gallery," he muttered under his breath. Ava's hands trembled as she took it. She knew what it would be, a diamond necklace they had admired in a window on Madison Avenue last week, a piece he had promised would be a pre-wedding gift. She flipped the lid open. There, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was the necklace, glittering under the penthouse lights. A beautiful, expensive lie. She snapped the box shut and placed it on the table with a sharp, definitive click. She looked at Marcus, truly looked at him, and for the first time she felt nothing. No love, no desire, just a vast, empty space where those feelings used to be. "That's enough theatre, Marcus," Isabella said, her voice cutting through the tension. She stood up, all pretense of civility gone. The game is over. I don't know what you're talking about, he blustered, trying to regain the offensive. You're being hysterical, Isabella. Whatever you think you know. I know about the shell corporations registered in the Caymans, Isabella interrupted, her voice like ice. I know about the inflated art invoices from the Bennett Gallery. I know about the consulting fees paid to a non-existent firm in Delaware. I know you've been embezzling from my family's trust for the better part of 5 years. Marcus paled. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking old and haggard. That's a ridiculous accusation. My forensic accountant, Julian, doesn't think so. The SEC doesn't think so either. They've been building a case against you for months, Marcus. Insider trading, wire fraud, money laundering. It's quite a list. You did this, he whispered, his eyes wide with a horrified realization. You tipped them off. I protected my family's assets, she corrected him. You were a liability, a bad investment that had to be cut loose. And like any bad investment, you have to be written off completely. He sank onto the edge of the sofa, the champagne bottle slipping from his grasp and rolling, unheeded, across the plush rug. You can't prove any of it. It's my word against yours. Not exactly, Isabella said, her gaze flicking to Ava. We have a witness. Someone you confided in. Someone who saw you making illicit trades on her laptop. Someone you were careless with, because you never imagined she could be anything more than a pretty distraction. Marcus's head snapped towards Ava, his eyes filled with a venomous betrayal. You? You spoke to her? He snarled, the charming facade completely gone, revealing the ugly, desperate man beneath. After everything I've done for you? I gave you everything. Ava finally found her voice. It was quiet, but it didn't tremble. You gave me nothing, she said, looking him directly in the eye. You gave me lies paid for with stolen money. You didn't give. You took. The finality in her voice seemed to break him. He buried his face in his hands, his broad shoulders shaking. The Titan was nothing more than a common thief, caught in the act. It's over, Marcus, Isabella said, taking her phone from her pocket. My lawyers have filed for divorce on the grounds of financial fraud and adultery. They've also filed an injunction to freeze all your personal assets, pending the federal investigation. The doorman has been instructed not to allow you back into the building after tonight. You'll be staying at your club. I suggest you call your lawyer. She looked at him one last time, with a mixture of contempt and finality. George and the security team are waiting outside the door to escort you out. Don't make a scene. You've caused enough embarrassment for one evening. With that, she turned her back on him, a gesture of ultimate dismissal. Marcus Thorne, the man who commanded boardrooms and built skyscrapers, sat broken in his wife's penthouse, utterly and completely defeated. The master of the universe had just learned that he was never in control at all. 6 months later, the autumn chill had given way to the biting cold of a New York winter. The city was a flurry of activity. But for the 3 people whose lives had irrevocably collided in that penthouse suite, the world had been remade. The fall of Marcus Thorne was swift and brutal. The story broke in the Wall Street Journal, a carefully orchestrated leak from Isabella's PR team. Titan of industry indicted for massive fraud scheme. The sordid details of his affairs were largely kept out of the mainstream press, overshadowed by the sheer scale of his financial crimes. Isabella had been right. His affair with Ava was a footnote in the much larger story of his greed. He was out on bail, awaiting a trial that everyone knew he would lose. His company was in ruins, carved up and sold off for parts. His name, once a symbol of power and success, was now synonymous with disgrace. He was a ghost haunting the city he once owned, his picture occasionally appearing in the tabloids, looking gaunt and defeated outside his lawyer's office. Isabella Thorne, however, had thrived. She had shed the name Thorne like an old skin and reverted to her maiden name, Isabella Beaumont. She had taken full control of the Beaumont Trust and her family's fortune. In a stunning power move, she had used her own capital to acquire the best assets from Marcus's collapsed company, rebranding them under a new, powerful Beaumont global entity. The society pages now portrayed her not as the wronged wife, but as a brilliant, ruthless businesswoman who had cut cancer out of her life and built an even stronger empire on its ruins. She was more powerful, more respected, and more feared than Marcus had ever been. She was, in every sense of the word, the master. And Ava Sterling, she was gone. As promised, Isabella's lawyers had protected her. She gave a quiet deposition to the SEC, her testimony the final, irrefutable piece of the puzzle. Her name was never mentioned in the press. The money Marcus had stolen from her was returned, along with a substantial sum that Isabella had termed a relocation and recovery bonus. Ava took the money and she ran. She left New York, left the art world, left the woman she had tried to become. She moved to a quiet coastal town in California, trading the glittering skyline of Manhattan for the endless horizon of the Pacific Ocean. She bought a small house with a garden and enrolled in a landscape architecture program at a local university. She had cut her blonde hair short and let it return to its natural brown color. She traded her silk dresses for jeans and comfortable sweaters. Some days, she would walk along the beach and think about the woman in the emerald dress who had walked so proudly into that penthouse. She felt a strange mix of pity and disdain for her. That woman had been so desperate for a life that was never hers, so willing to believe in a beautiful lie. Ava was learning to build a life that was real, a life that was her own. It wasn't as glamorous as the one she had chased, but it was honest. It was hers. She had walked into that penthouse as a mistress, believing she was about to become a queen, only to discover she was a pawn. But in the end, in a strange twist of fate, it was the wronged wife who had given her the greatest gift of all. Not a key to a penthouse, but the key to her own freedom. 2 years can build a new world. For the woman who now called herself Ava Martin, shedding the Sterling name along with the life it represented. The world was one of sun-bleached wood, the scent of salt water and soil, and the quiet satisfaction of coaxing life from the earth. The landscape architecture program in California had been her crucible and her salvation. It was a profession grounded in reality, in seasons and patience, a universe away from the transient, high-stakes glamour of the New York art scene. She was in Miami for a week-long seminar on subtropical urban design. It was a trip funded by her own hard work and a small scholarship, a fact that gave her a quiet, fierce pride. On her last afternoon, she found herself standing before the gleaming glass facade of the Miami Beach Convention Center, the staging ground for Art Basel. For a long moment, she debated turning away. That world was a ghost, a past life that no longer belonged to her, but curiosity and a desire to test the strength of her own peace won out. She bought a ticket and walked inside. The air was the same, that unique blend of recycled, cool, expensive perfume and the faint, dusty smell of canvas and money. It was a cacophony of languages, of air kisses and insincere compliments. 2 years ago, she would have navigated these halls with a hunter's focus, her eyes scanning for potential clients, for powerful people, for a foothold in a world that always felt just out of reach. Today, she felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign tribe. She saw the desperation behind the smiles, the transactional nature of every conversation. She saw the beautiful, hungry young women, so much like she had been, circling the older, powerful men. It didn't fill her with nostalgia. It filled her with a profound, bone-deep relief. She was drifting through a German gallery's exhibit, admiring the stark, brutalist beauty of a concrete sculpture, when a familiar voice cut through the ambient chatter. It wasn't loud, but it carried the same effortless authority she remembered from the Penthouse. Ava froze, her back to the sound. It was coming from a small, roped-off lounge area where a live interview was being conducted for an Art World podcast. And with the Beaumont Foundation's new acquisitions fund, the voice was saying, we're not just investing in art, we're investing in the cultural bedrock of our communities. Slowly, Ava turned. There she was, Isabella Beaumont. She sat in a sleek white armchair, the epitome of grace and power. She wore a tailored white linen suit, her dark hair cut in a chic, shorter style. She looked younger, more vibrant than Ava remembered. The weight of Marcus Thorne's existence had been lifted, and in its place was an aura of absolute command. She was no longer just the wife of a titan. She was the titan. Ava watched for 10 minutes, mesmerized. Isabella spoke with intelligence and passion about her foundation's work, about fostering emerging artists, about the responsibility of wealth. She was charming, formidable, and utterly convincing. As the interview concluded to a smattering of applause, a small entourage of assistants and museum curators immediately swarmed her. Ava felt an invisible wall between them, the same wall that had always been there, only now she could see it clearly. She turned to leave, feeling she had seen enough. She had faced the ghost and felt nothing. It was a victory. As she navigated through the crowd towards the exit, a hand lightly touched her elbow. I had a feeling that it was you. Ava stopped, her heart giving a single, hard jolt. She turned to face Isabella, who had somehow detached from her orbit of admirers and was standing alone, her dark eyes appraising. "Isabella," Ava said, her voice steady. It was the first time she had ever said her name aloud. "You look well," Isabella observed, her gaze taking in Ava's simple cotton dress and sandals, her sun-streaked brown hair and makeup-free face. There was no judgment in her tone, only a detached curiosity. "California suits you. I saw your interview. You're doing incredible work," Ava replied, the words feeling formal and strange on her tongue. "It's what I was always meant to do," Isabella said simply. A flicker of something unreadable passed through her eyes. "Marcus was sentenced last month. 20 years. He'll likely be out at 12 for good behavior." The information was delivered like a weather report. Factual. Distant. "I know," Ava said. "I read about it." They stood in a small pocket of silence amidst the swirling crowd, two women bound by a past that felt like a fever dream. The power dynamic was still there, but it was different. It was no longer wife versus mistress. It was a queen and a survivor, acknowledging a shared, scorched battlefield. "I always meant to tell you something," Isabella said, her voice lowering slightly. "That key you had, the one with the thorn crest, it was a prop, a fake." Ava stared at her, uncomprehending. "A fake? But it opened the door." "It did, because I had already unlocked the door from my system. Marcus had it custom-made by a jeweler. The real guest keys were simple silver fobs. He created that heavy, ornate thing just for you. He loved the theater of it all, the grand gesture. He wanted you to feel like you were being given the key to the kingdom." Isabella's lips twisted into a wry, mirthless smile. He never understood that the kingdom was never his to give away. Of all the betrayals, this small, posthumous detail was somehow the most clarifying. The key, the symbol of her victory, the very object that had propelled her into that penthouse, was a lie. A piece of stagecraft in a play where she was the only one who didn't know her lines. It wasn't just that the promises were false. The very props were counterfeit. The knowledge didn't bring pain. It brought a profound and final sense of release. It severed the last, lingering thread of a story she had once told herself. "Thank you for telling me," Ava said. And she meant it. Isabella gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. An assistant appeared at her elbow, whispering urgently. The world was calling her back. "Good luck with your gardens, Ava," she said. And then she was gone, disappearing back into the crowd, a queen returning to her court. Ava stood alone for a moment longer, the noise of the art fair fading into a dull hum. She thought of the fake key, the silk dress, the stolen money, the whole glittering, hollow facade. Then she thought of the California sun on her face, the feeling of rich soil under her fingernails, and the simple, honest beauty of a seed pushing its way towards the light. She had walked into that penthouse wanting a kingdom. She had walked out with something far more valuable. Herself. Turning her back on the world of art and lies, Ava Martin walked out into the bright, warm Miami sunshine, and for the first time felt completely and utterly free. And so, the story ends. Not with a bang, but with the quiet rebuilding of lives. It's a raw, unflinching look at how the lines between love, ambition, and betrayal can blur in the pursuit of power. We saw a woman, Ava, who thought she was winning the ultimate prize, only to find out she was just a disposable part of a much larger, more dangerous game. And we saw another woman, Isabella, who was underestimated and dismissed, rise from the ashes of betrayal, not as a victim, but as the architect of her own powerful destiny. This story is a reminder that the truth is often far more complex than it appears. And sometimes the greatest power comes not from opening a door, but from knowing which keys to hold. If this story of shattered illusions and unexpected alliances captivated you, please let us know in the comments below. What did you think of Isabella's ultimate move? Could you sympathize with Ava's journey? Your engagement helps our channel grow and bring you more compelling stories like this one. Don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with someone who loves a good drama, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you for listening.